March 15th, 2003, page 47. Today I chose her. Brown hair, innocent smile. She doesn't know it, but she's already dead. This isn't the script of a horror movie. It's not fiction created by some Hollywood screenwriter. It's a real, handwritten entry in the diary of a serial killer. And the worst part? She was absolutely right. 3 days after that entry, that woman disappeared without a trace. Her body was found weeks later, exactly as he had described in his private notebooks. Now think about it. What really separates you from a predator? Sometimes nothing more than a page of paper. Because while you're writing about your day, about that boring meeting at work, about weekend plans with the family, there are people out there writing about you, about how they chose you from the crowd, about the route you take every day, about every detail of your face, your routine, your schedule. They write about how they planned every second of your end, as if they were preparing a recipe or organizing a vacation. And here's the truth no one wants to hear. Murderers' diaries aren't dramatic confessions full of remorse. They aren't tear-soaked pages begging for forgiveness. They are hunting manuals. They are meticulous essays on domination and absolute control. They are living proof, recorded in permanent ink, that evil doesn't spring from nowhere, like a lightning bolt on a summer night. No, it prepares methodically. It feeds on detailed fantasies. It perfects itself in silence, far from the eyes of the world, in the secret pages of an ordinary notebook that could be in your house, your neighbor's house, or anywhere. Today, you're going to enter this dark territory with me, not to glorify monsters or transform them into fascinating figures of pop culture, but to understand, once and for all, how these minds truly work. Because knowing the predator's patterns, deciphering the language they use, recognizing the signs they leave scattered along the way, that may be exactly what keeps you and the people you love alive. And it all begins when investigators open these forgotten pages and discover secrets that should never have been written. Look, if you've made it this far, you've already realized this isn't just another true crime video to pass the time. This is about understanding the signs that most people ignore until it's too late. So do me a favor. If this kind of content makes sense to you, if you want to continue delving deep into the minds of predators and learn to recognize danger before it knocks on your door, leave a like now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because every week I bring real cases, in-depth analyses, and information that can literally save lives. And tell me in the comments, have you ever noticed strange behavior in someone close to you? Have you ever felt that chill, that feeling that something wasn't right? I want to know your story, because sometimes our instinct picks up signals that our rational mind hasn't yet processed. Now let me take you to the case that completely changed how investigators view murder diaries. We're talking about Dennis Rader, better known by the nickname he created, BTK, bind, torture, kill, a name that perfectly summarizes the cold and calculating methodology of one of the most disturbing serial killers in American history. Dennis Rader was the kind of man his neighbors adored, a devoted family man of two, married for years. He was a leader in the community's Lutheran church, the kind of person who organizes charity events and helps seniors carry groceries to their cars. An exemplary public servant, he worked as a compliance officer in Park City, Kansas. If you crossed paths with him on the street, you'd probably think, this guy is the perfect example of the average American citizen. But in his spare time, when the mask fell and the doors closed, Dennis Rader transformed into BTK, bind, torture, kill. Between 1974 and 1991, Rader murdered 10 people in Wichita, Kansas, men, women, children. No one was safe when he decided to hunt. But here's the detail that makes all the difference. What truly set Dennis Rader apart from other serial killers wasn't just the brutality of the crimes. It was the obsessive documentation. This man kept extremely detailed diaries, organized as if they were company reports, not only about the murders themselves, but about every fantasy that preceded them. He drew entire scenes, sketched the positions of the bodies, wrote complete scripts like a film director planning his next production. He created precise schedules, timetables, maps with access and escape routes. He planned every move with the same dedication an engineer uses to build a bridge. On one of the pages discovered years later by the police, he had written in meticulous handwriting, Project Fox Hunt, target, lone woman, between 25 and 35 years old. Ideal time, 3 in the morning. Escape route, already tested 3 times. He literally tested his escape routes before committing the crimes, driving through the silent streets of Wichita as if rehearsing a deadly choreography. Rader didn't kill on impulse. He wasn't driven by uncontrollable outbursts of rage. He rehearsed, he repeated, he perfected. And while he maintained that impeccable double life on the surface, smiling for cameras at church events, those hidden notebooks were the only place where he could be who he really was. His capture in 2005 is almost ironic. It wasn't sophisticated forensic evidence that caught him. It wasn't DNA or fingerprints. It was pure ego. After years of silence, Rader couldn't resist the temptation to return to the spotlight. He sent a floppy disk to the local press, full of files detailing the crimes, because he wanted attention. He wanted the whole world to know how intelligent he thought he was. But inside that floppy disk were digital metadata that connected him directly to the computer at the church where he worked. And when investigators finally entered his house and opened those diaries kept as secret trophies, they found something beyond confessions. They found the mind of a man who turned murder into his personal art form. But this raises a question many people ask. Why on earth do murderers keep diaries? Why document on paper something that could put you behind bars for the rest of your life? The answer isn't simple, but when you understand the psychological reasons behind it, everything starts to make disturbing sense. First, let's talk about control and power. For most of us, a diary functions as therapy, a safe space to process emotions and organize thoughts. For them, it's the exact opposite. It's absolute dominance crystallized in words. When a murderer writes about the victim, about every detail of the crime, about the fear in her eyes, he is prolonging that moment of supreme power. He relives the total control he had over another human life. It's like watching your own favorite movie. Repeatedly, only in this case, he is simultaneously the director, the main actor, and the only spectator in the audience. Each rereading of those pages reactivates the neural circuits of pleasure associated with the act, keeping that feeling of superiority alive. Secondly, there's the issue of validating their own narrative. Individuals with psychopathic traits often carry a grandiose and distorted self-image. They genuinely don't see themselves as common criminals or uncontrolled monsters. In their minds, they are special, unique, evolved beings who operate beyond the moral rules that limit normal people. And the diary? That's exactly where this internal narrative is constructed, reinforced, and polished until it shines. In the private pages, far from the judgment of the world, they write things like, "I am not a monster. I am a misunderstood genius. They will never understand my vision." It's a form of constant self-validation, a private echo chamber where no one can challenge the distorted version they've created of themselves. Third, and this is especially calculated, it functions as a rehearsal and technical refinement. Many serial killers evolve over time, learning from their own mistakes like a professional perfecting their craft. And the diary literally serves as a notebook for a macabre improvement course. They write observations like, "Next time, don't use that route. There were cameras I hadn't mapped." Or, "She screamed a lot. I need a faster method to incapacitate her." It's a horror improvement manual, where each entry represents a lesson learned, an adjustment to the methodology, an optimization of the process. And now we come to the fourth reason, which is perhaps the most disturbing of all: profound existential boredom. Many of these individuals simply don't feel the emotions that make life meaningful for most people. They don't feel genuine remorse, proportionate fear, or real empathy. What they feel is a constant void, an emotional absence that corrodes them from within. Writing about crime, fantasizing in detail about others, creating entire universes of violence on the pages of those notebooks. This temporarily fills that internal black hole. It's pure entertainment for them, the only time they truly feel alive when the rest of the world seems gray and tasteless. Now here's where things get even more frightening. If you take dozens of these diaries that have been seized over the decades by police departments in the United States and around the world and analyze them carefully, something disturbing begins to emerge. They follow patterns. Whether we're talking about a killer from the 70s or more recent cases, certain characteristics appear repeatedly, as if there were an invisible manual that they all instinctively follow. The first pattern is the systematic dehumanization of the victims. When you read these diaries, one thing immediately stands out. The victims are rarely called by their real names. They become targets, projects, it, which in English means thing, object, This is a psychological mechanism very well documented in the literature on criminal behavior. If you don't see the victim as a complete human being, with family, dreams, fears, and stories, it becomes exponentially easier to hurt them without the weight of remorse. And here's the crucial detail. They actively practice this dehumanization on paper, long before acting. It's a deliberate mental conditioning, page after page, until that person becomes just an abstract concept in their minds. The second pattern is what criminal psychology experts call progressive fantasy. Almost all of these killers begin by simply fantasizing, writing completely fictional scenarios where they are the protagonists of violent stories. Initially, these fantasies may even seem relatively controlled or disconnected from reality, but over time, something dangerous happens. The fantasies become progressively more detailed, more viscerally violent, more anchored in real places and people. The dividing line between imagination and reality begins to dissolve like ink in water, and the diary functions as a perfect historical record of this terrifying progression, showing exactly when the transition occurred. The third pattern involves the concept of written trophies. You've probably heard that many serial killers collect souvenirs from their victims, right? A ring, a lock of hair, a piece of clothing. But the diary itself functions as the ultimate trophy, superior to any physical object. Because inside, absolutely everything is preserved eternally. The fear in her eyes, his absolute power, every second of that total control over another life. It's a memory that never ages, never loses its shine, and can be revisited countless times with the same emotional intensity as the original moment. And the fourth pattern is perhaps the most useful from an investigative point of view: the clear signs of escalation. Experienced investigators in serial crimes learn to identify in these diaries exactly when the killer is about to act again. The frequency of entries increases dramatically. The language changes, becoming more urgent, more feverish. The fantasies cease to be vague and become frighteningly specific, with real street names, descriptions of people who exist. It's like watching a time bomb being armed in slow motion, each diary entry marking another second until the inevitable explosion of violence. These patterns are not mere coincidence. They are direct windows into the inner workings of minds that operate outside the boundaries of conventional morality. But not all killers follow the same operational manual. Let me introduce you to a case that perfectly illustrates the other side of the coin. Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker of Los Angeles. Between 1984 and 1985, he terrorized California with 13 confirmed murders, in addition to countless robberies, rapes, and brutal attacks that left the entire region paralyzed with fear. People locked their doors and windows even in the sweltering heat of the Californian summer, fearing that he would break in during the night. Ramirez didn't keep diaries in the traditional methodical way Dennis Rader did. He didn't have organized schedules or escape routes that had been tested 3 times. But when the police finally raided his hiding places, they found completely different, yet equally revealing notebooks, pages, and pages filled with disturbing drawings, obsessively drawn satanic symbols, pentagrams, inverted crosses, and phrases written repeatedly like dark mantras. Evil is my God. The night belongs to me. Hail Satan. What investigators discovered in these notebooks was deeply disturbing for reasons entirely different from the BTK case. Ramirez didn't meticulously plan every move. He was the exact opposite: chaotic, impulsive, savage in his approach. He chose victims randomly, broke into houses, without any specific pattern of location or type of residence, acting on impulses that seemed to arise from nowhere. But the writings revealed something deeper than simple impulsiveness. They showed a personal religion of chaos, a distorted philosophy that gave meaning to seemingly random violence. Ramirez genuinely believed he was serving dark forces, that there was some greater cosmic purpose in every crime he committed. In his mind, each murder wasn't an act of criminal violence, but a sacred offering to evil entities he believed were watching and approving of his actions. And this created a completely distorted, yet internally consistent logic for him. It wasn't a crime in his moral conception, it was religious devotion. It was the fulfillment of a calling he felt he had received. This is a crucial pattern that needs to be understood. Not all killers are cold, calculating planners like BTK. Some are completely consumed by psychotic delusions, extremist ideologies, obsessions that dominate every aspect of their thinking. But here's the fundamental point. Even within the apparent chaos, there is an internal structure. Even when everything seems random and uncontrolled from the outside, there is a belief system operating underneath. And that's exactly where diaries, notebooks, and writings become precise maps of madness, allowing investigators to navigate the killer's mental labyrinth. When Ramirez was finally captured and arrested, he smiled directly at the TV camera during the hearing and said with complete conviction, "See you in hell," because in his completely twisted mind, he had done absolutely nothing wrong. On the contrary, he had fulfilled exactly the purpose he believed he was destined for since birth. This level of disconnection from the moral reality shared by society is terrifying, but it is also incredibly revealing about how different types of criminal minds operate. So now comes the question that really matters to you. What exactly can you learn from all this? How can you identify someone around you who might be on this dangerous path before it's too late? Because look, theoretical knowledge about past cases is fascinating, but the real value of this information lies in applying it to the real world, to the people you interact with daily. The first warning sign is an obsession with actively documented violence. And here I need to be very clear about the difference. I'm not talking about someone who watches horror movies on weekends or who enjoys true crime like you watching this video right now. I'm talking about someone who compulsively consumes violent content, and more importantly, documents detailed reflections on that content. Reflections like, if it were me, I would have done it differently. I would have used a different weapon. I would have chosen a different time. When someone starts writing about how they would improve a crime, how they would put themselves in the aggressor's place, how they would optimize the execution, it ceases to be passive entertainment and becomes something completely different. It becomes mental rehearsal. The second sign is casual dehumanization in everyday language. Pay attention to how the people around you talk about other human beings. Some people frequently refer to others as objects, as targets, using extremely cold and calculating language when discussing situations involving real human beings. That thing over there, that target, this item needs to be removed. This is not a normal way to talk about people. It's literally a cognitive training in dehumanization happening in real time, right before your eyes. The third sign is a lack of empathy documented in personal records. If you have access to someone's private writings, whether a physical diary or social media posts with high privacy settings, and you notice that this person writes about real tragedies, the suffering of others, or the death of other people with complete coldness, excessive, morbid curiosity, or worse still, with some kind of pleasure or satisfaction, this is an absolutely gigantic red flag waving violently. People with functional empathy react to the suffering of others with discomfort, with compassion, with some level of emotional distress. When this reaction is completely absent, something fundamental is missing in that person's psychological structure. And the fourth sign is the combination of progressive social isolation, along with a dramatic increase in private recording. When you notice that someone is increasingly withdrawing from normal social interaction, but simultaneously begins to compulsively write, draw, or create any type of private content, especially if that content has dark or violent tones, this follows a pattern that is extremely well documented in criminological profiling. Now, before you panic and start suspecting everyone, let me be absolutely clear about one thing. This absolutely does not mean that every teenager who writes Gothic poetry will become a serial killer. It doesn't mean that every heavy metal or horror fan is a psychopath in the making. I'm not saying that at all. But what criminal investigators and forensic psychologists are trained to do is identify specific combinations of these factors happening simultaneously. It's the convergence of multiple signals that triggers red flags, not isolated behaviors analyzed out of context. And here's a fact documented in hundreds of real cases. Diaries and private writings are often the very first concrete evidence that appears when authorities begin to investigate a suspect. Long before any crime is committed, those pages were already there, stored in drawers or hidden under mattresses, silently screaming about what was to come. So why exactly are we having this whole conversation? Why delve so deeply into these dark and disturbing details about how killers document their most terrifying thoughts? The answer is simple and vital, because genuine knowledge about how predators operate is literally a survival tool. It's not an exaggeration, it's not dramatic, it's pure and simple statistics. The overwhelming majority of serial killer victims had no idea they were in real danger until it was too late to do anything about it. They didn't recognize the warning signs that were right there, visible. They didn't identify the behavioral patterns that, in retrospect, were obvious. They didn't realize they were being carefully observed, meticulously studied, coldly targeted. And this didn't happen because these people were naive or stupid. It happened because no one ever taught them what to look for. The diaries that investigators find reveal an absolutely brutal truth that society needs to accept. Murderers don't simply appear out of nowhere like supernatural phenomena. They develop over time. They obsessively rehearse before acting. They leave concrete traces along the way, sometimes only on paper, on pages that no one but themselves reads. And when society consistently ignores these traces, when it treats obvious signs as mere harmless eccentricity, or just a rebellious teenage phase that will pass, innocent people die. That's it. It's that simple. The collective negligence in recognizing dangerous patterns has fatal consequences. Dennis Rader, aka BTK, was finally captured after decades at large because his own inflated ego betrayed him. He craved attention. He craved public recognition for his supposed superior intelligence. Richard Ramirez was eventually caught because he became careless, making operational errors that allowed for his identification. But here's the question that should keep you awake at night. How many other predators are out there right now, at this very moment, sitting alone in dark rooms, writing, meticulously planning their next moves, refining techniques through repeated mental rehearsals, patiently waiting for the right moment to transform fantasy into bloody reality? And look, the real difference between becoming just another tragic statistic in the news or a survivor who managed to escape might lie precisely in recognizing when someone close to you begins to change in subtle but significant ways, when fantasy ceases to be mere imagination and becomes a consuming obsession, when those written pages stop being harmless outpourings and become real rehearsals for concrete actions. Murder diaries are not just convenient evidence of crimes that have already happened in the past. They are glaring warnings of future crimes yet to come. They are detailed maps showing exactly where that person's mind is, and more importantly, where it's going. And now that you've gotten this far, now that you know all this, you'll literally never look at an ordinary notebook the same way again. You'll pay attention to details that previously went unnoticed. You'll recognize patterns that most people completely ignore. And this new awareness that you've just developed in the last few minutes can genuinely make the difference between recognizing real danger and remaining vulnerable. If you've stayed with me until the end of this video, you already understand that what we do here goes far beyond superficial entertainment. It's about equipping you with real mental tools to navigate a world that isn't always safe. So if this type of content makes sense to you, subscribe to the channel now. Every week I bring in-depth analyses of real cases, dismantling the psychology behind crimes in a way you won't find anywhere else. And leave a comment saying, "I made it to the end, so I know you really absorbed all of this." Seriously, I read the comments, and I like knowing who's on this journey with me. And of course, if the video added something for you, leave a like. It really helps the algorithm to bring this type of educational content to more people who need to understand how predators really work. There's a video here that complements this topic, delving even deeper into another disturbing aspect of the criminal mind. Click and stay with me there, because we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of this dark universe. See you on the other side.